Hey there, everybody. So as promised, I'm finally going to do a video on the Disney Pixel RPG Compendium. You may have heard about this. You've probably heard me talk about it. I've linked to it in multiple videos. If you've been anywhere on the Discord or on the Reddit, you've probably seen it or heard about it at the very least. But first of all, let me just explain what the Compendium is. It is a Google Sheet that was started by another user who went by the name of Kyuhei. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So he is he deserves all the credit for starting this compendium. And a lot of what you see here is based off his foundation. So huge shout out to Kyohei for starting this compendium. He unfortunately no longer plays the game. He you know absolutely don't blame him for quitting the game because it's been a very slow slog for these first 6 months, and a lot of people dropped off because there just wasn't that much going on in the game, and interest fell off pretty quickly for a lot of folks. So don't blame Kyohei at all. But I did get in contact with Kyohei because people were asking if it was ever going to be updated. So I got in contact with him. He was very nice and let me take over the compendium and start to sort of maintain it and keep it up to date. So while a lot of the foundation here is Kyohei, a lot of the more recent stuff and new additions to the compendium are from me. Now, with that being said, this is also a community project. So the compendium, I definitely get a lot of feedback, a lot of constructive criticism, a lot of additions and things are made to the compendium due to all the fine folks on the Discord. So several names here. These are just folks that have contributed to it in one way or the other. They deserve a lot of credit as well. Always open to new ideas and new ways to make the compendium better. So if you see something here that you think could be improved, or if there's something that's not here that you would like to see added, definitely let me know in the comments below, or come join us in the Discord. So here's the Discord link. This is the main Discord that most of us use to talk about the game. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in here were discussed in the Discord. So a lot of the play testing for the mechanics, we went over that extensively in the Discord, and so we felt safe enough to post a lot of that stuff here. So if you notice anything or you want to get in contact with me, the Discord is probably the best place to do that. All right. Or you can just leave a comment in the comments below and I'll be happy to get back to you. You may also know that several months ago I started up the DPS comparison spreadsheet. So I have a link to that here as well. That is specifically just looking at damage dealers and how much damage they deal, trying to get a track on which damage dealers deal the most damage. It became less and less relevant as the game went on because it was less important which damage dealers could deal more damage, and it was more important how well you could build your party. You could often get away with just one damage dealer. However, with the new boss battle simulator coming up and the whole premise behind that being dealing as much damage as you can in a set number of turns, I'm hoping that the DPS spreadsheet will become a more valuable resource to a wider audience, which is why I bring it up here. So if you've never seen it before, this is what my spreadsheet looks like. So I have been maintaining this and keeping it up to date. Except I did forget to add Eric. I'll make sure and go and add him later. But basically, just real quickly, this just lists all the different damage dealers, lets you know their striker type, lets you know if it's on their EX only or if it's on their skill and their EX, for example. So you can see their stats and their damage and how it compares at each LB level. And then there's also an LB comparison tab where you can actually change the LB level of any individual character and see how they rank. You do have to download your own personal copy in order to actually use the drop downs, but I found it's a very useful tool. Thank you very much to Sir Thin for that. He actually contributed this particular tab to the spreadsheet. I've got a damage calculator, so you can actually just input some values and it'll spit out damage values here. And then if you're really into the nitty gritty, you can get into actually looking at the damage values for your low variance, average variance, high variance. Again, this could be more important for folks that are like tryhards in the boss battle simulator. But yeah, so just want to let you know that this is there. But this video, I did another video on that which you can actually find in the DPS spreadsheet. So I've got the YouTube tutorial here, so you can actually look at that at another time. So that's already up there from months back. This video is just for the compendium though. Now there is a lot to go over in the compendium, and I'm not going to like do nitty gritty going over everything. If you see all the tabs below, there are a lot of tabs on the compendium. So think of it almost like a website, but it's a Google Sheet instead of a website. So no ads or anything like that. But yeah, I'm not going to go over every little bit in detail because it would take way too, like this would be like an hour-long video. However, I will just kind of quickly touch on some of these sections. The one I know everyone's interested in is the tier list. Don't worry, I'll get to that. Feel free to use the timestamps to jump straight to it. If you want to go straight to the tier list, that's fine. I'll put timestamps in the video so you can go straight to the tier list. All right, so yeah, once you get into the compendium, which all you need is just the Google Doc link, which I'll put in the description below. You can also find it stickied in the Discord. I post it on just about every video I put in the description, so you can look for it there. But yeah, so first tab is just quick tips. And one other thing, if you're looking at this on mobile, the tabs will actually be at the top instead of the bottom. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, just a couple of things. The quick tips is literally just that, quick tips, things to help you get started if you're like a brand new player and you're wondering, you just want to know like a few basic tips just to kind of help you understand how the game works and how you can play the game a little bit better. And so, you've got general tips, battle turn order, tips on SP, your skill points, and battle tips as it regards to buffs. A lot of people don't know that buffs stack, so that's kind of an important thing to understand. With the general tips, number one is get Genie as your starting character from the beginner gacha. Yeah, so like this is a very common question that we get, like, who do I reroll for in the tutorial gacha? Genie. Genie. There is no other unit you should bother pulling for in that tutorial gacha. Get Genie. He is going to be the best unit you'll have. He's going to carry you for a long time. Still one of the best units in the game because he's a hybrid buffer, buffing both your attack and your defenses. So yeah, I'm not going to go over all of this. You guys can read it if you're interested. But it's a nice, just sort of like, quick little stop to teach you a couple of important things about the game. The more nitty-gritty mechanics you can find in the game mechanics tab. This is still a work in progress, so this is actually a brand new section that I have started on the sheet. But yeah, it so far has 3 parts. We've got damage mechanics, which looks at how we deal damage. So it's actually the damage formula for how damage is calculated for the damage we deal to enemies. So if you're interested in that, it talks about how it's calculated, all the different modifiers and their values that go into that formula. Just a quick TLDR, massive and immense damage are obviously your highest modifiers, and those are the ones you want to look for on your damage dealers. Critical hits, color striker weaknesses, all really important modifiers to consider. Also for damage dealers, considering that boss battle simulator is coming up, you'll probably want to put the attack skill power up ability seed on your damage dealers. Specifically, you want to go shoot for the 20%, which is the 3-star version, because that actually adds to your modifier. So a 20% attack skill power up adds basically 0.2 to all of your modifiers. That works on both your attack skill and your EX skill, but not your normal attack, so keep that in mind. Also goes over the enemy damage formula, which is calculated very differently from the way the damage we deal to enemies is. It's actually an exponential formula as opposed to just an arithmetic formula for us. Enemies deal damage to us in an exponential formula, and what that basically means is attack breaks and attack buffs are huge. So when an enemy attack buffs its attack, it's going to dramatically increase its damage. On the flip side, breaking its attack is going to dramatically reduce the incoming damage. So that's all I really want to point out there. You can look at the nitty-gritty if you're really interested there. I also want to point out critical hits, aka crit. So there are two basically there are 2 buffs that go along with critical. So your crit chance is a 10% chance. That's the base crit chance. If you have no buffs of any kind, 10% of the time you're going to do a critical hit, and the crit base modifier is 1.3. All right. But if you have a crit buffer on your team, and this is why Bell is such a powerhouse, you can increase your crit chance up to 50%, which means every other hit basically. So half of your hits are going to be critical hits now, and that mod can be bumped all the way up to 1.8. So if you have both crit chance and crit power, you're going to be dealing considerably more damage than you would be just without it. Now, with that in mind, it is important to have both. So just buffing your crit chance, while it is going to increase your damage, it's not nearly as important as bringing that along with the crit power modifier. You really need that crit power modifier to go along with it. All right. Defense mechanics, we just talked about defense buffs, what defend does, what damage reduction does. The upshot here is that damage reduction is always better than defense buffs, but if you can bring both, you're going to be basically indestructible. Also, evasion, not all that important because it only works on normal attacks, does not work on enemy skills. All right. So while it's nice to have and it could save your life, it's not an absolute must. Okay. You definitely want to focus on damage reduction and defense buffs before anything else in that order. And I just do a quick primer on boss mechanics and talk about the 3 different phases and how you should potentially handle those different phases. In the buffs, debuffs, and ailments, we list all the different buffs that are in the game that we found so far, all of the breaks and ailments that are in the game. So if you ever wondered what they are, what they look like, how to tell which one is on your party, this is what they are and what they do. I haven't updated the skill sources yet, but I'll get around to that eventually. And then we talk about the skill seed. So there are a lot of different skill seeds. So when you're like rolling for those seed abilities, so this is going to list all the different abilities you can potentially roll on your units. And so they've been broken up into different categories. So they're offensive ones. So like attack buffs, attack skill power up. There's crit chance and crit power buffs. So those are the different ones you can roll. And we've also got the defensive ones. So defense buffs, damage reduction, evasion, healing, HP regen. Okay, and then just anything that doesn't fall into those 2 categories goes here, like your SP. You're increasing your max SP or SP reduction, your SP charge, SP gain up, different status ailments you can add, which honestly, these are all trash, and then status resistances. Probably the most important one being skill lock. SP lock also has its uses on SP batteries like Marie, so definitely consider that one. But really, those are the big ones that you want right there. All right. All right, so let's get to the tier list, what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants a tier list. All right, so first of all, disclaimer, this is intended to be a reference point for casual or free-to-play players to gain a better understanding of how these units compare to one another. It is a collaborative effort between myself and all the good folks in the Discord. We talk about units. We try to come to an agreement on where all these units belong on the tier list. It's not always 100% foolproof because there are always going to be people that think, no, I think this unit's better, or I think this unit's worse, or this unit shouldn't be that rated there. And it's never going to please everybody. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. It's just a basic reference guide to give you an idea of where these units rate amongst one another. And so it has 6 basic categories. So the double S these are like your God tier, right? So these units, if you have these units, they are great. They should be on your party. And so that includes Hero Mickey, Adventurer Mickey, Aladdin, and Jafar. They are the top DPS units or damage dealers in the game. Rapunzel is by far the best healer. And then you've got your Belle, Ursula, and Genie as your God tier support units right here. Now, something to keep in mind, if the units are not double S, that doesn't mean they're trash. So anything from SS to B is a usable unit, especially if you have lots of LB unit or LB levels on them. So like an LB3 or LB4 Donald, you might be preferable over like an LB0 Peter Pan or an LB0 Adventurer Mickey. It just might depend because they're going to have a lot bigger buffs, like innate buffs, and they might be able to survive longer, and they might honestly deal more damage just because they have higher LB levels. So that is something to keep in mind. This is assuming all LB levels are even and equal. All right, so do keep that in mind. And so your S level, several good damage dealers here at S level. These are still really, really good. You've got Pooh and Magic Mini as your S tier healers. I think they're excellent. And then you've got Jasmine and Honey Farm Pooh as your S tier supports. A category, still very, very good units, but in certain situations, you might want to replace them with units above them. Eric is actually really strong in the current event, the current Battle Challenge event. And so, and for newer players, I think he's honestly going to be a really good unit because he's a good breaker. He's free to LB max, which means pretty good damage. And so that's why he's sitting up here in the A tier. But honestly, a lot of the free units have been pretty good. Cinderella, Hero of the Lamp, Genie, all really good. The B tier units are ones that just, they don't quite meet up to the standard of all the units above them. Like Donald and Aurora, not very good damage dealers. Nick, he is a 2-star, so he's saved from being generally bad. And Goofy, same thing. He's saved from being generally bad, but because they deal decent damage at a 2-star level, and then Goofy's got the breaks, they are usable. You'll notice there's an auto category. So these are units that are really good for auto battling. So if you just want to set it on auto and you don't want to actually manually play the game, these are great auto battle units. So that's why I have them down here in this category. You may see some units in both, in this category and up here as well. All right, because they may serve both purposes. But I have them categorized in here as they should be as an auto battle unit. And then all these units down here are generally bad. This is pretty much all your 1-stars with the exception of 1-star Marie. And then a lot of your 2-star units. The problem being that 1-star and 2-star units are incredibly hard to gain LB levels. If it was easy to get LB levels on these guys, there would actually be a use case for quite a few of them. Like, for example, Eeyore would actually be a really good breaker if you could just get him to LB 1 or 2 reasonably. I think if you could get him to LB 2 with reasonably, then he would actually be like a B or an A because he's actually a pretty good breaker. But unfortunately, yeah. And then which one? Oh yeah, I think it's it's Chip, I think, or is it Chip or Dale? I can never remember. But this little guy right here is actually a really good SP support. So he's got SP charge and SP gain up, but only if he's LB2. So it's like, you're never going to get a 1-star unit to LB2 within like the first year of playing. It's just stupid. So yeah, totally useless unless you're a whale. But yeah, that's why all these guys are down here in generally bad. But yeah, you can have a look, think what you think. Feel free to disagree with me. Let me know in the comments below. But the whole point is to look at this, and then once you've looked at this, go into the next few tabs to look at those units and get. I've taken the time to actually put together each of these little bios on every single unit that's come out, including a little general review, their tier rating, their skills from LB 0, 1, and 2, because they don't change anymore after LB 2. So things change from LB 0, 1, and 2, but then they don't change again from LB 2, except for their SP cost goes down to LB 3. So that way you can see how it changes at each LB level. It lists their rarity type, their gotcha types, or their premier or limited. Unfortunately, we have a whole crap ton of limiteds in here, but they're broken down by their category. So AoE DPS, single target DPS, healers, tanks, and buffers. All right, and yeah, I've got every single unit in the game, and they're listed by order, in order of appearance, right? And so the more recent characters will be at the bottom. All right, like single target DPS, the most recent one we've had is Eric. All right. And so I do these little reviews on each of the units. So if you're wondering why I've put them in different categories, this will give you a good understanding of why they are there. So we've got our healers as well. Not quite as many healers as we have DPS, obviously. Tanks, really, there's just Goofy, who is terrible. And there's Marie, who is not a tank. She's an SP. She's technically a tank because she has the taunt skill, but she's actually an SP battery. But yeah, so I talk about that in the review as well, if you're wondering about her. And then we've got our buffers, right? And so this is where you're going to actually learn whether or not a unit is good or whether or not a unit can work for you. And that's all I have so far on the compendium. Like I said, if you have any suggestions on how I can improve it, or if you want me to add like a new section or something like that, definitely let me know. Like I've considered adding some more sections to the game mechanics tab. I've considered adding like a farming section to talk about which stages to farm, things like that. But if you have some suggestions, please feel free to let me know. And please use this resource because I think it's a really helpful resource for newer players and players that have been playing for a while to just to see how it works. And if you want to be a part of it, please join the Discord and come in and talk about it with us. We love to talk about it. Because honestly, there's not much to chat about in this game most of the time, and so we love just having people come in and talk about things, giving us ideas and suggestions on how to make things better. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys. Thank you so much for following me, and I'll see you on the other side.